This is an ancient young girl who has been frozen for 200 million years. Not only is she very pretty, but also very beautiful. At this moment, Cuihua took out a flashlight and shone it on her. Suddenly, she found that the girl's pupils unexpectedly contracted, and this is a physiological reaction of a living person. This immediately surprised both of them, so he quickly shone the flashlight on her eyes again. As expected, the pupils contracted once again. Seeing this, Cuihua immediately told her colleague about this discovery. Everyone quickly brought equipment and attached a detector to her skull. Soon, the girl's brainwaves began to jump continuously on the monitor. This immediately made everyone realize that the girl who had been frozen for 200 million years was still alive, so they immediately set up a small sun and started baking the ancient ice popsicle. As the temperature continued to rise, the popsicle quickly melted into non-fu spring water. But Cuihua thought the speed was too slow, so she brought in a few more machines that heated up the temperature directly. Soon, after a year, the popsicle completely melted and the girl's graceful figure was also revealed. Everyone immediately lifted her onto a stretcher and started the rescue work. While drawing her blood for testing, they also provided her with oxygen. Fortunately, the girl's heartbeat had already recovered and her blood pressure was gradually returning to normal. Just as they were about to cut open her mink coat to examine her body, they unexpectedly found that there were no traces of frostbite on her. Before everyone could figure out what was going on, the girl's eyes suddenly blinked. She had regained consciousness. Seeing this, everyone was amazed. The girl who had been frozen for 200 million years had truly come back to life. Looking at the 4 eggs on her head, the girl was scared and trembling. Before he could figure out what was going on, Cuihua quickly took off the oxygen mask. But as soon as she touched the outside air, Xiaomei couldn't stop coughing, and her breathing became very difficult. Her body also started trembling uncontrollably. Seeing this, everyone quickly restrained her and then gave her an injection to calm her down. Soon, Xiaomei's emotions stabilized, and everyone was curious about her. So they decided to ask her about her past lives and present life. Soon, after 1 year, Xiaomei woke up. However, just as Cuihua was removing the gauze from her, she unexpectedly found that the needle mark left from the blood test had miraculously healed. At this time, a colleague on the side also tried to communicate with her, but she seemed to not understand the Chinese he was speaking. Meanwhile, another colleague in the backstage made a new discovery. They noticed that Xiaomei's brainwaves were almost identical to those of humans from ancient times. In other words, Xiaomei was a young and beautiful woman who had lived for 200 million years. This immediately made everyone feel incredible. And at that moment, a colleague rushed back to the company in a panic. It turned out that while he was out surveying, the weather suddenly changed drastically, and he ended up with severe frostbite all over his body. Even his athlete's foot was 80% frozen. Seeing this, everyone immediately started the rescue, but before they could open the equipment, the man's heartbeat had already stopped. And just when everyone was at a loss, Xiaomei, who heard the commotion, also arrived. She slowly placed her hand on the man's body and closed her eyes tightly, as if trying to open his ren and du channels. After a while, the man's heart started beating again, and even the nearly frozen athlete's foot instantly recovered. This miraculous scene left everyone in shock, and it made them suspect that Xiaomei might not be a human living on Earth. While the two of them were still discussing, a colleague monitoring the surveillance suddenly fainted. After thorough examination, Cuihua discovered that the colleague was infected with a mysterious virus and Xiaomei was the carrier. With their current medical capabilities, they could not eliminate the virus. Helpless, Awei had to swallow his pride and find Xiaomei to ask for his help in saving himself. This time, Xiaomei seemed to understand the Chinese Awei was speaking, so he followed Awei to the ward without hesitation. They saw him stretch out his hands and place them on the man's chest and forehead, continuing to perform his magic. But every time he finished casting the spell, he would faint inexplicably. While Cuihua was examining him, she unexpectedly found that the hemoglobin in the girl's body was rapidly decreasing. Obviously, if she continued casting the spell, her body would not be able to handle it. Feeling extremely resentful, they immediately confined him to prevent any accidents. But Xiaomei knew that the people who had fainted in the room were all caused by his arrival. He didn't want to see these innocent people die because of him, so he first knocked out the guard, and then secretly went to the ward to start treating the poisoned people. But by the time they found out, it was already too late. At this moment, Xiaomei was already lying on the ground in critical condition. Seeing the severity of the situation, everyone quickly sent him to the hospital. However, modern medical techniques were unable to cure him. Xiaomei could only wait for death helplessly. At this time, Awei came to his side and confessed his love to him passionately. It turned out that Awei had fallen in love with Xiaomei at first sight. But now, they were separated by life and death. Upon hearing this, Xiaomei tried his best to smile, and then fell asleep forever. And so, the fate of the two never started but ended. Thus, the movie ends.